A subplot in the big hit, Mark Wahlberg's 1998 action comedy, involves a video store pestering Wahlberg's character, socially anxious hitman Melvin Smiley, to return an overdue VHS copy of the film King Kong Lives. In a movie full of 90s fashion, 90s action aesthetics, and even the band Fun-Loving Criminals on the soundtrack, somehow this video store subplot still feels like the most dated element of the movie today. Ironically, the year of the film's release is the same year that saw the moment that would ultimately make that storyline feel antiquated: the 1998 launch of Netflix.com, the online expansion of the DVD rental by mail company that Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph had launched the year before. In fact, Hastings has often said the impetus to create Netflix came after he was fined $40 for an overdue copy of Apollo 13 from his local Blockbuster, though Randolph has since repudiated that story. Regardless of whether video store late fees played any part in the creation of Netflix, there's no doubt the company's successful model and very fast growth through the early 2000s had a seismic impact on video stores, even before its move into streaming. As many movie fans preferred the subscription-based Netflix model and the convenience of simply returning a DVD to your own mailbox and waiting for your next one, as opposed to traveling to a local video store, especially for those customers for whom this was not always an easy geographic option. Ironically, Reed and Hastings actually offered Blockbuster the chance to buy the fledgling Netflix for $50 million during the dot-com bubble collapse of 2000, an offer Blockbuster CEO John Antioch saw as a joke and infamously turned down, only to watch Netflix then go on to become a multi-billion-dollar entertainment powerhouse, while his own company floundered and slowly died throughout the next decade and a half, despite them even ultimately trying to compete with Netflix by offering their own rental-by-mail service in addition to their physical stores, starting in 2004. This did temporarily pull some business away from Netflix, but it was too little too late. Not only did Netflix simply respond by lowering their subscription fees, but in 2007, Netflix made a huge, game-changing move as they began offering at-home streaming of movies and TV shows, fulfilling the fantasies of fans who had always dreamed of the ability to instantly call up any favorite programming at the touch of a button. The days of video stores and even Netflix's own DVD-by-mail model were now numbered, as Netflix pivoted more and more into the streaming world, including eventually producing their own original content, and most Hollywood studios followed, beginning to offer their own streaming and home video on-demand platforms to compete, which inevitably led to the collapse of the only recently booming physical home media market. Blockbuster declared bankruptcy in 2010, and by 2019 had closed all but one of their remaining stores. Most video stores suffered the same fate, and today the few that remain are seen more as a nostalgic curiosity, a throwback to an earlier era. Today, it's unlikely Melvin Smiley would have to worry about that overdue copy of King Kong Lives, as it's much more likely he would simply find the movie on one of the hundreds of streaming platforms now available to us. And if one is looking for a particularly amusing indicator of the long-term impact Netflix had on the world of video stores and the larger entertainment landscape in general, consider that Mark Wahlberg was making a movie that featured a video store subplot in 1998, and 20 years later, he was making a streaming exclusive movie for the very company that began the revolution that would ultimately make video stores a thing of the past. That's progress for you. The year is 2020, and Netflix is ready to debut a brand new cinematic adaptation of a popular, long-running literary detective character, and in the process, hopefully launch the next big streaming action comedy franchise with Spenser Confidential.
0.
Welcome once again to Fair Later Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris. Happy Tuesday. God bless you. Stay prayed up.
You know, you got to get it in now. You got to get it in now because this is the end, baby. Until we talk about more movies with him later.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But this are you feeling the feels? Are you sad? We're wrapping up a 2-month series.
Sadness is not the word. I would say I am relieved that this is the most at one time that I've watched Mark Wahlberg movies, and I've said in the past of the other episodes that I am a fan. Okay, so I'm not anti Wahlberg. And it's been super fun to track his career and era from really, his true movie stardom till today, which we're going to talk about. But it is I'm done. I'm done for a while, I think.
Well, it's funny because you can say you're a fan of anyone, right? But then by the nature of our show, it's like, well, we're going to spend all time looking at like his failures.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter how much of a fan you are, even if you like some of them within that, and we'll see with today's. But so this is the last episode in Mark WahlTURD and the Yucky Bunch, which is our 4-episode series looking at failed Mark Wahlberg franchise starters. We looked at Planet of the Apes, The Italian Job, Mile 22, and then today we're going into a fairly recent one. I like when we do these. I like when we're able to just kind of go back a couple of years or a few years and look at something that, you can already tell. Like, someone might say, like, I don't know, they might still make the sequel. We're shooting our shot here and saying, even though it's allegedly in development and it has been for the last few years, we're shooting our shot and saying we don't think there's going to be a sequel to 2020's Spenser Confidential. Chris, why don't you tell us about Spenser Confidential?
For sure. This is directed by one Peter Berg.
No shit.
This is his fifth collaboration with Mark Wahlberg.
Second failed franchise entry in a row.
Yeah, in a row. It is based on the 2013 novel named Robert B. Parker's Wonderland. That was by Ace Atkins. But the character is actually a continuation of the detective book series called Spenser by Robert B. Parker. There's 40 books in the series, so there's quite a lot to actually take for subject matter at that point. So it is a little, it's not going to happen. We're not going to get more. but yeah, 40 books are sitting right there. Plus, the characters were also portrayed in TV on the show Spenser for Hire. And then there was like TV movies. I think 4 of them made. There was another little film series beginning in 1999.
Yeah, 4 TV movies that were like a continuation of the show with those actors, and then 4 future TV movies with a different actor playing him. So
yeah.
Kind of individual ones, yeah.
The film that we're going to talk about is written by Sean O'Keefe. He is a video game writer. And the acclaimed Brian Helgeland, he wrote LA Confidential, Conspiracy Theory, The Postman, A Knight's Tale, Mystic River, Man on Fire, and F2F alum Robin Hood from 2010.
Yeah. So when you say acclaimed, we should put an asterisk there and say he's acclaimed for certain movies and not all of them necessarily. A very kind of scattershot filmography.
I actually didn't even mention Elm Street 4, by the way. So
yeah, which I like, but I wouldn't say it's one of the better Elm Streets.
The budget of this film is $95 million, and Trev, this is quite a first for us after. 4.5 years of doing this podcast. We have never had a movie go straight to Netflix. So this movie has no box office. It was never released to the public.
But thankfully, we have very trustworthy, numbers for it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Here are the stats released.
Tell me the
Netflix.
metrics.
For sure. Here's the metrics now, not box office and money. The metrics.
The content metrics.
The proprietary metrics, by the way. Okay. This was released by Netflix on March 6th, 2020. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, which is crazy to think about. It is reported by Netflix, like I said, that they had 85 million households watch the film over its first 6 weeks of release. To be clear, Netflix has never said what the fuck that means.
Right.
That could be just tuning in for a minute. Or the full, 2 hours. But who knows? 85 million households clicked the button and clicked the tile. Variety reported that the film was the 21st most watched straight-to-streaming title of 2020. Put that on a fucking poster. Wow, what a weird time.
When you think about the fact that it was released during COVID, there's a part of me that says, like, yeah, I bet a lot of people did watch this, right? Because we were all just stuck at home, sure. And that was the time for these kind of movies to come out. But then when you hear that, when you hear Variety, it was like, well, it was the 21st most watched straight-to-streaming title in 2020, which was the COVID, we're all stuck inside here. That actually sounds bad.
Yeah, I agree.
To be 21st, Yeah.
Another stat I wanted to put here, because the movie cost $95 million, right? And you're probably thinking, holy shit, Netflix, why are they spending so much money on their movies when they don't, have really much like immediate return?
Yeah. Or you see the movie and you go, where did that 95 go?
Yes, they filmed everything on Boston's streets. Well, it's because Mark Wahlberg was paid $30 million for this movie, his highest salary of his entire career. So this was the moneymaker for Mr. Wahlberg. Not that he's struggling. I don't know if you knew this. Between his business ventures, his fucking, what is it? What's the fast food? The Wahlburgers he's got.
Yeah.
This guy's
protein
becoming
supplements.
Totally. And like you said before, this is kind of the start to his streaming mogul status. Right.
I think it's important to kind of think about that, like to keep, like, we've been tracking, the fun thing about this series, as you said, has been we've been tracking his career. And I think even in the first episode, I said he's got the kind of career you can kind of look at in stages.
Yeah.
And this definitely is the beginning of this, whatever modern stage he's in now. And I think it's very, very important to point out he made $30 million for this movie, because I think that tells you why he would suddenly be like, so over in the Netflix world, they're willing to pay me this much. And this basically sets off, it's not that he's completely abandoned theatrical films, and in fact he's made at least one in the time that we might watch someday, but for the most part he's been pretty much churning out these straight to streaming. He's had a few Netflix movies, at least one for Apple Plus, I think. He's just kind of like, I don't want to say given up on being a theatrical star, but it kind of feels like that to a certain degree, right? Like he just knows the money is in, the easy money is in streaming for him, I think. It's that kind of Adam Sandler thing, right? Where he's like, well, they're willing to pay me and my production company a lot to just churn out these movies, and I'm just enough of a name that like they see a value in me, right? He's exactly the kind of star a streaming service would see value in, and that, it's tough to, you're not going to get the Tom Cruise and the Brad Pitts of the worlds to be exclusive for you, but you can get a Mark Wahlberg.
And to be fair, dude's following the money, so he's getting the bag, which is great. Yeah. But also, he is kind of seeing where the industry's going. He is a little bit of a trendsetter at this point, and he's not a follower by any means. I think Mark Wahlberg is one of the guys that saw the forest through the trees in the last few years to say, hey, our industry is going down the shitter. Yep. And, streaming is the new thing. Me and you just recently talked in our group chat about how, we're not covering new ground here, but young people especially, because we're talking about the Minecraft movie, okay? We're talking about that. And how people are not going to the theater, especially young people, because they don't see a reason why. They just don't hold movies to a certain acclaim or respect, or even like an art form that even matters anymore, because Gen Z and Gen Alpha now are just inundated with content 24/7 that a movie based on whatever character does fine, but they're seeing those characters all the time. There's really no difference between or like Mark Wahlberg on the big screen or on the small screen, because he has 7 streaming movies right now. So why would I run out to go see Uncharted? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of,
well, except people did,
they did too, but they did sort of. You even just said there might that's a movie that's still kind of like they announced, we're gonna do more.
I know, but it was a hit. It was a hit. Sure, it's one of those ones where it's like if it's like The Italian Job, right? It's probably still not going to get a sequel based on just how long it seems that it's taking them to say anything about it. Right. But it was a hit,
Yeah, but it's just like,
but overall, I agree with what you're saying. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, movies are just not special, and I think as sucky as that sounds, Mark Wahlberg, to rein it back, I think Mark Wahlberg is just like realizing that movies are just a job now.
I agree. It's complicated though, because I agree, but at the same time, my only pushback on that would be, it's still disappointing to see him do that, and I would still argue he might be. You might be right that he's ahead of the curve and saying like, look, this is where the industry's going, and I'll become one of those guys. But I don't think he's done a very good job of it in a way, right? Like, I'm sure he doesn't care because he is making the money. but he has not been able to make the kind of streaming movies that have any impact or like I was looking at his filmography from Spenser Confidential to today, and he's made a few streaming movies I just had never even heard of. Like, like in 2022 he did Me Time with Kevin Hart, another Netflix movie where he plays a character named Huck Dembo. I did not even know that movie existed, right?
Same.
I don't think I even heard of The Union with him and Halle Berry from last year, which is an Apple Plus one. So I don't know, he is like a streaming guy now, but it's strange because as I just said, he's enough of a star where I can see why streaming services would want him. But I feel like if he just keeps doing this for more and more years, that star is really going to fade. And don't you think like today he's kind of more known because of like Wahlburgers and just because of like the memes about him from earlier performances when theatrical did matter? I wonder he's
leaning into it, right? That's the thing. Like you mentioned Adam Sandler. Like Adam Sandler is the streaming guy now. And I think he doesn't care. Like I really genuinely think he doesn't care. And his it's kind of the he is still super famous. One second. Adam Sandler is still super, super famous, and same with Mark Wahlberg. But they just are defined different with a different generation now. It's a different level of metrics for fame at this point. Wouldn't you think?
I agree. The crucial difference with Sandler is that at the same time he has also had kind of like a resurgence in like the stand-up world, with like that really like well-received special.
Kids. Not with kids.
Yeah, I guess. But he's at a level of fame too where he pops up on like Conan and stuff and people like love him, and like every few years suddenly he comes back and he like fires off like an Oscar caliber movie, right? To remind us oh, he's still got the juice. And like Wahlberg doesn't seem to have that, so he's just kind of cranking out these like glorified B movies that are just popping up on streaming and just being instantly forgotten.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. But mind you, hey, he just worked with one of your favorite directors, Mel Gibson.
I mean, Mel Gibson is a good director. I did not bother to see that movie, which did not look that good to me.
No,
but
no. And Mark Wahlberg looks horrible in it. We don't like making fun of actors, but he was doing something.
I don't even know. Did that movie do well? I can't imagine it did. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, like that movie proves he's still, he's not entirely walked away from theatrical, but in terms of like his productions, like the movies like he's really involved in as a producer, he just looks like he wants to exist in that streaming world. And I'm sure it's because we talked about this previously too, about him becoming kind of a slightly less annoying and slightly minor version of The Rock.
Yeah,
he has his production companies now. He even has his handpicked favorite directors that he probably knows he won't get any pushback with. Peter Berg, and they're just gonna like stay with the streamers because that's where the easy money is. And honestly, we just were making fun of the fact that Netflix doesn't tell these numbers. It's as much as I'm saying these movies come out and are forgotten, it's probably easy for these people to be like, oh no, like everybody in America watched it. Trust me, and you really have no sense of what kind of failures these movies were.
And again, though, it's all algorithmic measurements now, right? And metrics. So it's like maybe truly the engagement on Netflix are people click onto Mark Wahlberg's face more than other actors here or there to get these giant paychecks, right? Like that doesn't mean that they're watching the movies. But again, that's annoying for us as people who enjoy movies. But it goes back to what I was saying about younger generations just not finding this stuff special in the slightest now. It is really just about engagement. So Mark Wahlberg's face is getting clicked on the tiles the most. And to that extent, I guess he is a success. But like, boy, is that dystopian, It just sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah, and like I said, I agree, but at the same time, like I said, I feel like his streaming era hasn't produced, because like there are certain streaming movies that do kind of break through, and like it's important for this discussion for us to point out, as much as we kind of bemoan the industry going this way and wishing things had stayed the way they were, I'm not above admitting there are some direct-to-streamers that end up being quite good, and some, filmmakers and actors who have pursued that, and like we have like the Knives Out sequels being Netflix exclusive, and I certainly like those. Last year, loved Rebel Ridge, so Jeremy Saulnier is there, and of course Fincher being the ultimate example. I'm not gonna, I'm still always there for a Fincher movie, even though they're just going to Netflix. And I just don't feel like...
And the Fincher movies that our friends even forget exist.
I know.
We're calling you out.
Yeah, but I don't even feel like Wahlberg's had anything like that that's broken through, and that's kind of what I'm waiting to see. Will he actually have a Netflix or Apple movie that actually gets some additional traction? It doesn't seem like it. It feels like he's cranking out the really forgotten ones, which is why we're doing this movie today. This isn't even saying anything about the quality of it, but I think it's safe to say this movie kind of came and went a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now. So, again, I said I like Mark Wahlberg. I'm not anti-Wahlberg. I will say this era of Mark Wahlberg that he's in from, 2019 and to present day, I am not a fan of this Mark Wahlberg. I think there's something odd about him. We're saying he is following the money 1,000%. He's the Rock light. To the point that he's, waking up at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning to go work out and then post about it.
Morning. Brothers in prayer, God bless you.
God bless you.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Islam.
God bless you. E-team, staying prayed up. Putting in that work.
Facts.
Woo! 4 a.m. club. Yeah, everybody start somewhere. Let's go.
He's in a different stage of his life too. He's he's a father of 4 teenagers right now, so his priorities are definitely changing. So that, even saying that out loud and then thinking about making bank, well, that makes sense even more so now. And also he has gotten really faith-based.
Yeah.
Your faith means so much to you. Have you always talked about it, or did you feel at some point okay, I have a platform here and I just want to share this part of my journey?
I have. It's a balance. I don't want to jam it down anybody's throat, but I do not deny my faith. That's an even bigger sin. It's not popular in my industry. But, I cannot deny my faith. It's important for me to share that with people, but I have friends from all walks of life and all different types of faiths and religions. So, it's important to respect and honor them as well.
Yeah. What does it mean to you, your faith?
Oh, it's everything. It really has. It's afforded me so many things. Obviously, God didn't come to save the saints. He came to save the sinners. We've all had things and issues in our lives, and we want to be better versions of ourselves. And through focusing my faith, it's allowed me to do that. And I know a lot of people have been challenged with COVID and everything else. I was away from people and church and community and connection for a long time. But, with people who are wearing masks and they want to, stay away from each other, we want to bring people together.
Community is a big part of a faith practice, absolutely.
And the world affords you a lot of comfort, but we're not made for comfort. We're made for greatness. And in order to be greatness, we got to be in the fight to get the rewards.
And I know he has said he's always been this way, and I'm sure there's a lot of truth to that. But in the last 5 years, he's really come out strong being faith-based. And I don't think, again, I'm Roman Catholic, and I'm not anti-faith-based in the slightest, and to each their own, but he's really been putting it on Front Street more than ever before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's the kind of faith-based where, again, it's tricky because I don't know, and I don't know the man, and you don't know what their actual motivations are. There are times where you wonder, is this the cynical kind of faith-based where
same.
He's making it into a product to make money off of it, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And the other bummer about it has been he's fallen into that trap that I hate where because of his faith, he's gone back and said well, I wouldn't make Boogie Nights anymore. I'm ashamed to be in that movie. And it's that's your best movie, man. And just to talk shit about that now and be it's just oh, come on, don't do that, but it's he's definitely a different person nowadays.
And a lot of people are, COVID seemed to melt most people's brains. And again, Wahlberg's doing really well. He is, but he's just he's just not my kind of Wahlberg anymore. We're going to talk about the movie. I had a lot of good things to say about him in Italian Job and just his, his prior career. We even said good things about Mile, whatever the hell that one was.
To be fair, none of that was about him.
That's actually true. But this era, if we're talking about these distinct eras of the man's career, it's a bummer that we are here today in the present with a Wahlberg acting the way he does now as just kind of another actor when he should be still a mega movie star, A-lister, movies blown up in theaters, So yeah,
that's where I come from. I think the bummer is that this 2020 on, it's so bored by him now.
Yeah,
like the
that's
choices he makes.
Great descriptor. Great descriptor.
Yeah. And I just have a little correction corner for myself. I said that the union with him and Halle Berry was an Apple Plus. Sorry, that was actually Netflix. It was The Family Plan that was Apple Plus. But hey, that's getting a sequel apparently. So apparently that was a huge hit on Apple. So what do I know? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that one broke through. But again, how would I know? Like.
Yeah, well, I mean that's okay. Do you want to just talk about Spenser, the character now, and kind of let's do that. Let's jump into this 40-book series with TV shows and movies. This whole thing that started really in 1973 with a novel called the Godwolf manuscript. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna throw it to you first because you're our resident bookworm. Does Spenser mean anything to you in any way, shape, or form?
Not in a book sense. It only does. I'll give two answers to that. Robert B. Parker means something to me in a book form. And I've never read anything, but just as working in bookstores for over a decade, as you know I have, we still, like the mystery section, there's still an entire shelf of Robert B. Parker, Right. And I was also very aware of that when Robert B. Parker passed away, how his series continued under other authors. So we said like Ace Atkins took over Spenser, and I was aware of that because, we would still stock those. Yeah. So he's definitely one of those authors I've always known of just because he was so prolific and he had kind of multiple popular mystery series. I hadn't really clocked the fact that Spenser was one of those in a literary sense, but I do, as we said, there's a little bit of an age difference between us. I was a child of the 80s, and even though I didn't watch it at the time, I do remember the name Spenser for Hire as a TV show that was on at the time, So that was like my memory of it, and to the point where even if memory serves, even though it's gotten kind of shaky, because as you said, this movie kind of came and went, I do think like when I heard about this movie being made, I was aware like, oh, that's like that show, right? They're rebooting the show. So that's all really. I didn't watch the show, I didn't read the books, but in just a pop cultural sense, I was aware that there was this private eye character called Spenser that Robert Urich had played.
Yeah, I had no idea what this was until we threw it on the docket. And looking it up and reading how much history there is to this character and all the ways this movie could have gone. Interesting, honestly. It's a pocket of pop culture that I am just totally unaware. But yeah, so maybe some listeners are like me, so maybe I'll throw you a couple of tidbits here. Spenser, the character, is loosely based on Robert B. Parker himself, mostly just because they're Bostonian. Also, Parker and Spenser share the fact that they were infantrymen during the Korean War. Then this is where it deviates, and Spenser, the character, was a former state trooper. He received a football scholarship to Holy Cross, but injured his knee, took up boxing, and met Henry Samoli, who's an owner of the gym that he was working out at, and then Hawk, who is a guy he kind of takes under his wing, pun unintended, by the way. And he's more of a gun for hire, but Spenser is a private eye. That's where he comes from. So this is all about being a smart-mouthed, tough guy with a heart of gold from Boston, ex-boxer. Wow, Mark Wahlberg, all roads led to this,
It's Robert B. Parker taking the classic pulp noir private eye characters, of Raymond Chandler and Mickey Spillane, so taking like the Sam Spades and the Philip Marlowes and saying, what if that took place in like more modern day in Boston, so it's just an updating of that, and I love that kind of stuff, but like again, this one kind of escaped me other than just being vaguely aware of the TV show. Now, Chris, let me tell you something about the TV show, because as you like to, every time we do one of these movies based on a show, as you know, I tend to be like, you know what, I'll do a little bit of extra research and I'll go and watch a little bit of this. And I know you're probably wondering, did Trevor bother to go watch Spenser for Hire?
You watched all 4 made-for-TV movies.
Well, okay, that's funny you say that, because what actually happened is I decided this time, I was like, you know what? I don't give a shit. I watched the movie and I was like, okay, and I'm, without saying anything about the movie, I was like, okay, I got it. I read the, the research in the character. I was like, I'm not going to bother watching the show. And then my wife yelled at me and she was like, no, she's like, that's your thing. Chris always talks about it. Like, you have to watch the show. It's true. So about an hour and a half before this episode, I was like, really? And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay. At the end, I looked it up and the show's on Amazon. And I was like, well, should I watch like a random one or should I watch the pilot? And she's like, well, you got to watch the pilot, see what like the origin is like. So I was like, okay. So I throw on the pilot I'm watching the pilot. I'm looking at the clock. It's getting really close to record time, and I realize I hit the info thing. Oops, the pilot is a 2-hour movie. I was oh no, I did not afford myself. So I'm coming into this episode telling you I have watched half of an episode of Spenser for Hire, half of the pilot.
Well, you know what? I still commend you because you still gave an extra hour, and
I did.
That is again. You know what? Liz is right. You know, I'm glad she's there to scream at you when I'm not screaming at you, so that's great. And, you know, you got to do the work. You have to uphold a level of professionalism and character, and I'm glad you at least tried.
Well, what I can tell you from the half I've seen, you know, since I'm the expert now, is that this is what I kind of expected and why I wasn't even going to bother. Is it kind of felt pointless because I had read that this movie was a very, very loose adaptation of Spenser, and even from just watching this half of the pilot, I can already see that. Like as you said, the TV show is clearly more in line with the books, whereas the movie we're about to talk about took some bigger liberties with the character and even some of like, you know, the very, very specifics about what he is. And so that was the only interesting thing about what I saw the show is like being like, oh yeah, this helps me. It more confirms what a deviation the Peter Berg, Mark Wahlberg movie was. The show, what I saw was fun enough in that like, you know, campy 80s detective kind of way. Had a really bad voiceover narration, but Robert Urich had some swagger and, you know, the little bit of Hawk I saw. This is actually in the pilot, Hawk is still his enemy. Like they are, and I'm sure by the end of the pilot, they make up and team up, but I've not gotten there yet. They are antagonists with each other at this point, but yeah.
Will you go finish the episode?
Yeah, probably. I have a sickness. It's, you know, because next time I log in Amazon, it's going to be like resume watching, and I'm going to be like, yeah, I guess I need to.
Yeah,
so.
Your completionist tendencies will take over. Yeah.
Then will I watch the rest of the 3 seasons and also the spinoff, A Man Called Hawk? Yeah, maybe.
You're like, I already ordered the box set.
So it did get 3 seasons, and then as you said, it got movies later. But we should also point out, Hawk even got his own spin-off show for 1 season afterwards. And we mentioned Robert Urich played Spenser. Hawk, this is kind of interesting. Hawk was played by Avery Brooks, who was actually in The Big Hit with Mark Wahlberg and Bokeem Woodbine, who are also in Spenser Confidential.
There you go.
And there's also, Avery Brooks had another thing that he was in. It's escaping me right now. He had like another, oh, that's right. He was Commander Sisko on Deep Space Nine, the Star Trek show.
Oh, you son of a bitch. I was sitting here with like my face being like, where is he going with? Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Well, with that, talk about the movie, jump to it. What do you think?
Yeah, there was really nothing because this is just like a Netflix movie. I can't win. We don't have much like to say about the any production stuff. So they made it, and we're going to talk about it.
What do you say, Spence?
Not much.
How's it feel getting out?
We have a little going away message for you.
For me?
Give him hell, Spencer.
Gotcha.
You made it. Try and stay on this side for a while. Let's go see your girlfriend.
5 years ago, you got yourself sent to prison. What was I supposed to do? Wait?
I'm sorry.
I love you! How do you like that?
Let's go.
Yo!
Henry!
What? You said I'd have my own room.
Hawk, this is Spencer. Spencer, this is Hawk. You two are gonna be roommates. I'd like you two to get to know each other.
Mi amigo.
Hey, ¿qué pasa?
Or you just got out?
Yo, get in.
You're in big trouble. For what? You smashed the car through a restaurant!
It's time you tell me what's really going on here.
Picture this. Dirty cops, drug cartels, some big politicians all working together. When I was a cop, I was trying to take these guys down. But they framed me.
So what's the plan?
We're gonna blow this wide open. You want in? No. You don't get the cold gun.
Hawk is the name of a man with a shotgun. Spencer does your taxes.
That was good. I'm gonna let you have your little gun.
You never learn your lesson, do you? You were gonna do what was right with your strong moral code.
This isn't a bar for Boy Scouts.
I thought you knew how to punch.
There were 5 of them.
We're about to walk barefoot to the gates of hell.
That's how you throw a punch!
Holy shit. You got 2 grown men running around playing Batman, Robin, and Alfred over here.
Don't call me Alfred.
It's been 5 years since Spenser, an ex-Boston police officer, unleashed a beating on his old captain. Now released, Spenser plans to get out of town for good, but not before being roped into helping his old boxing coach and mentor, Henry, with a promising amateur named Hawk. Soon after, things turn suspicious once Spenser's old Captain Boylan is executed, as well as an old colleague found dead by a supposed suicide. None of this sits well with Spenser, so he takes it upon himself to uncover the truth and find out exactly what the heck is going on in the city he loves so much.
What city is that, Chris? Check your notes. Check your notes.
Seattle. No, it's Boston.
Boston. Yeah, it's Spenser Confidential. Very surprising to me that Mark Wahlberg would be intrigued by a movie about a guy who does time for assault, but is actually a good person at heart, and then gets out, and people have this like bad opinion of him, but ultimately learn that he's a real hero. You know, it's interesting. Chris, I'll let you go first. Why don't you? I know this is a first-time watch for both of us. What were your thoughts about Spenser Confidential?
Yes, this movie came and went on Netflix, like we said, even though it was the 21st best whatever the heck watched thing in a week or so in 2021 or 2020. I'll say this. Okay. This movie's not like a bad movie. It's just a movie. I'll say it like that. It's like it's just a movie. And I told Trev before we started recording, I think this is going to be a pretty short episode, but this movie's like so just like whatever, you know. This is something that people collected a check on, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Peter Berg right now.
Yeah,
this is the movie. This is the kind of movie that cements that Peter Berg really isn't that great of a director, and the reason I say that is because, you know, I always coin that he's Michael Bay light. Right? He's B grade Michael Bay. B grade Bay, as I like to call him. But you know what? Michael Bay has made Netflix movies before, and they're still packed with Bayisms, packed with style. They are still completely 100% Michael Bay action flicks. For better or for worse, it's still a Michael Bay movie. This Spenser Confidential is just another forgotten Netflix movie that is going to die in the depths of the funnel vortex that is the forgotten Netflix junk. And like, this is just like a total work for hire movie. So that's one thing about Peter Berg. The next thing I'll say is about Mark Wahlberg. And I'll say this. He's a lot more measured and calmer in this movie than he is in Mile 22. So I thought he was fine. Now, the third thing I'll say is about Winston Duke. He sucks in this movie. And he's supposed to be the guy that Spenser leans on. He's supposed to be buddies with Spenser. They're supposed to grow as a friendship. And Mark Wahlberg, you know, he's still got that movie star shine to him that it not that he's giving much back to Winston Duke, but Winston Duke is giving like nothing. He's just mean mugging the whole time. There's no chemistry between the two guys. There's no laughs. There's no friendship. So when you're building a movie that is supposed for the context of our show, you always like to correct me on this because I said the movie's not a bad movie, but you're gonna say, well, for the context of the show, and I'm gonna say in the context of failure to franchise, where this movie is supposed to spawn another half dozen more Spenser Confidential movies like the book series did, I have less than zero interest in watching these two frenemies go on any other adventures because there's nothing there between them.
They're thrusted into each other's lives, I would say. They're thrusted into each other's lives by Henry, and they're, strange bedfellows, you could say. They share a room, and they're unlikely friendship that they would never pursue in any other circumstance, but that's what makes the story so great, is that these two people who would never usually be friends in the outside world now become the best of friends and each other's support system in a world where both of them have nothing.
It's not fun. It's not joyful. I was listening to some BTS stuff, and like Mark Wahlberg had said, this movie, it's got some laughs and it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's a serious subject, but it has fun with it. And this is just like the tamest, lamest version of what Mark Wahlberg is trying to sell me. So I'll leave it there. I'm not like hyped up or anything. Like, it's just kind of, I guess, the mood I'm in. But I'm interested to hear what you think. If you agree, disagree, please do tell. Do tell.
I want to rename this movie because Spenser Confidential is really a shitty title because it really kind of means nothing. What is confidential about this? But I want to just rename this Netflix the movie.
Yes.
Or honestly, at Netflix the content. Right, because you don't want to call this a movie. Because you're right. Like, this movie to me is just the ultimate, every representation of what a Netflix movie is. In that it's exactly what you said. And the only difference of opinion I would have is when you say this proves Peter Berg's not a very good. I think it proves Peter Berg has given up. Because I think there was a time where Peter Berg cared, and there was clear potential. I mean, you go back and look at something like The Rundown, and especially Friday Night Lights, and it's like, man, this is a guy that does have a style, and I think might go on to good things, And there's even some movies he's done since then. I mean, you talked about how you liked some of the other Wahlberg collaborations, like Deepwater Horizon and things like. But then you look at Spenser Confidential, especially coming off of Mile 22, where we talked about how that seemed kind of like they didn't know what kind of movie they were exactly making. It was a little clueless. And then you look at this, and it really felt like it had that Netflix thing. And this is why I brought up the Sandler comparison, because people always talk about these Happy Madison productions where it's clear that Sandler's he tells all his friends, you won't believe this. Netflix is giving us $40 million to just all go hang out in Hawaii and make a movie. And we don't really even have to care about the movie, but we can definitely hang out at the pool later that night and go cliff diving the next day, And this is very much like Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg are like, oh my God, they're giving us $95 million or whatever to just go hang out in Boston and with our friends and kind of make a movie, but not try that hard. It was really funny to me after the Netflix logo. I was expecting this to have 100 production company logos, which it didn't. But the only one it had was for I think it's their company.
Yeah.
So the very first thing you see is it just says original film. And that is so funny in retrospect because there's nothing original about this movie. It is so just rote and just all tropes. Now, I agree with you that because of the nature of the Spenser character, or at least this version of him, which, as we said, is pretty different than what I know from the show and the books, because he's not even a private eye. He's just he's an ex-cop who gets in trouble, goes to prison, and then just kind of becomes a vigilante character. And they even make a point in the movie to say he could never get a PI license. They have that line of dialogue in there. It's okay, so you're really cementing that this isn't the Spenser character.
Right.
But just by the nature of that character, as you said, an old Boston boxer who's gone to jail and he's out and he's living in Boston now again. Obviously he's better in this than he was in Mile 22. It just fits him better, right? So he's fine, like you said. The Winston Duke thing really confused me, and I don't know if it's a Winston Duke problem or it's a Peter Berg, the director, problem, because it just seemed like Duke had no idea how to play this character.
Zero.
And I know Duke's not bad because we've seen him be awesome in Black Panther. I know you and neither of us are that hot on Jordan Peele's Us, but he's really good in that. He's giving a great performance in it. And he just seems adrift in this. He has no idea what to do with this part. And
he's completely aimless.
Yeah, what is this relationship supposed to be between these two? The ultimate person I'll say is innocent, not surprisingly. Unfortunately, his last film performance ever is Alan Arkin, who is kind of, again, he's just Alan Arkin. He kind of nails every line, and you're I just wish this movie was about him. He's the only one who scores some real laughs here and there,
Yeah.
But this is just, I I mean, I have some stuff to say. It's like you said, it is just a movie, and like, yeah, I would say. I mean, I kind of like you said, you kind of predicted I'd say this. I'd say it is a bad movie because of that. Because this is the kind of movie that does bum me out the most. Because you're seeing this has like the real sheen of a movie, right? It's got actors we know, like this kind of like star actors. It's got a director who's made some big hits before. It's based on a known IP, and you just turn it on, and it's like Netflix wants you to just kind of like glaze over. And just like give yourself into it and then be like, okay, and then just like get to autoplay the next thing in the credits. So yeah, this is the kind of movie that bums me out the most because it just felt like you just get the sense everyone knew. Like, right, I don't feel any passion from anyone.
No,
they were like,
zero.
we just got to get to like day 30 of the production and turn it in and then move on with our lives.
I want to compare Mile 22 for a bit here because in Mile 22 we recognized a lot that was working in that movie. And primarily it was the action, right? And Peter Berg is a great action director. And I'm so glad you know what, I'm going to take your critique and I'm going to agree with you now. I'm going to take back what I said that this proves Peter Berg's not good. It is proven that he's given up. That is absolutely that's way better to say. Yep. Because his action directing in this is horrifying. It's any time there's a glimpse or something of style, pizzazz, a spark of life, it is immediately snuffed out by the action. Like there's a moment where Spenser gets confronted by a bunch of cops in a bathroom. And you know what? A bathroom fight, we've talked about it before. We've talked about it fairly recently. A bathroom fight can go pretty sweet and pretty gnarly, right? It is completely just the lamest fight that you've ever seen. It's done in 2 seconds. It's kind of played for half laughs, and it doesn't really work, so it doesn't land either. And there's a machete fight in a Mexican restaurant that, again, sounds awesome. You know, throw our guy Iko Uwais in that scene, and that would have been incredible. But instead, you get a glimpse of something fun, and then it's immediately done, and everything is junk, and it's boring as hell, and there's no fun to be had whatsoever. And then there's even, Trev, I'll say it, there's Chekhov's Optimus Prime, okay? and the very beginning of the movie, Spenser is trying to find a job, and he's going to go drive truck, right? That's what he's going to go do. And he fetishizes about a Peterbilt truck that is the Optimus Prime from the Bay trilogy. And it's black, though, this time.
Yeah, Black Betty.
It's Black Betty, but it is also Optimus Prime. And he's fetishizing it. He wants to drive it so bad. And at the end of the movie, he gets to drive it. And I could hear the Autobot theme roaring through in my head. It's this cool little explosion moment. And then nothing. Mm-hmm. So I don't get it. I don't... Other than what you're saying is that they had a moment, Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg were having whiskey or scotch or whatever, hanging out at 2 a.m., right? And being like, I cannot believe that we are getting away with this. Yeah. You know, it's like the old Staples commercial, you know, start the car. Like they're getting away with robbery here to create something so half-baked, so blah, so muted. You know, I know it's taking place in Boston, but it's got like this really muted Bostonian color grading to it that it even makes it seem like Boston is a bland city, which it doesn't sound like it is.
No, and he's made other movies about Boston that like bring the life and character of Boston alive.
Yeah.
And this one is just like, oh, okay. I think one of the key thing you just said in that to me was when you mentioned the bathroom fight and you said it was half played for laughs, which makes it confusing. That's kind of the whole movie. Like you mentioned how Wahlberg did some interviews where he said like, oh yeah, there's some light moments in it. And I will say kind of like the majority of the stuff that worked for me in this, what little there was moments of brevity, like lighter moments. I think the movie's at its best actually in just like the first half hour or so when we're just watching Wahlberg try to like reacclimate to life in Boston before you actually get into like the mystery, which is terrible.
Right.
But like this movie is like really bad at like tonal balance because the jumps from like broad comedy to like the seriousness of the mystery are really poorly handled. Yeah. There's a moment in this where in investigating this case, he eventually is given this, like, we find out that the case is tied into, like, his past history, and this case he was investigating about this young woman who was, like, protesting the gentrification of a Boston neighborhood to build a casino. And the mafia kind of came after her and ended up first killing her cat, and which I didn't like, of course, just like Winston Duke doesn't like it. Yeah. But then they kill her, and ultimately we see he finds this, like, surveillance footage of her being beat to death. Yeah. And we watch this, like, this footage of, like, this young woman being horribly beaten to death, and it's obviously very, very serious. And then like a minute or so later, we're back into, like, jokey joke, and I'm like, whoa. That was like, and the movie does that quite often, where it's like, boy, you needed to decide early on, do you want to make a Spenser comedy, or do you want to make, like, a really gritty Spenser, like, you know, noir? Because they're trying to have both, and because nobody cares, they don't have the skill or even just, like, the temperament or patience to try and pull both off, like, you know, and actually make that mix work. And so that, like, it kind of kept grossing me out a little bit, the way it was, like, bouncing back and forth between the two. Because another moment I thought was, like, legit funny. And this is where, again, I will give a slight compliment to Wahlberg, even though I do think this is, like, a super lazy everything from him. This did remind me that if we're going to keep comparing him to The Rock and calling him Rock Light and say, why is he not as annoying as The Rock? I'll tell you one thing that I'll give him over The Rock. He's willing to get beat up.
Yes, I have that written down.
And he's willing to understand that there's comedy in someone, like, as big as him getting beat up. And I did think the moment where he gets attacked by a dog is actually kind of funny because the movie lets it go on so long. And there's even, like, a secondary part of it where you think it's done, and then we see and then he's looking at the dog, and the dog, we've learned, knows how to open the gate and gets out and attacks him again. And I actually, like, had to laugh. I was like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. And he's, like, actually, like, Wahlberg's, like, screaming, you know, like giving these, like, really high pitched screams, and I was like, okay, I like this, and I like that he's willing to do this because, you know, The Rock wouldn't. So yeah, like, the comedy bits are great, and then every time it gets into, like, serious territory, it's like, oh god, like, and, like, totally. You know, from Brian Helgeland, who's, like, done the good version of this in LA Confidential, you know, it's like, oh no, like, this is just so generic.
Yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned a few of the scenes of levity, right? Because yeah, the dog attack scene is quite funny. I do like when he gets his ass beat and he's he's bleeding, he's bruised. Like, you'd never see The Rock like that. Yeah. And also another thing, you never see The Rock have sex. And there's a scene in the bathroom. We haven't even mentioned her yet, but Eliza Schlesinger is in this movie. And I used to be quite a big fan of her. I'll tell you that. I used to be much bigger into stand-up comedy. I'm not so much anymore, if I'm being honest. Speaking of the COVID era, it kind of ruined it for me in a lot of ways. But I used to be quite a big fan of hers. I think she's kind of a hottie. I like her, like when she shows up in things. But she started to lean into that goat impression. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I was never really that big of a fan of hers. Okay. So yeah. Okay.
Well, you don't think women are funny, number one.
Hey, but, I like
name one.
Nikki, I think Nikki Glaser is, like, much funnier than Eliza Schlesinger. And I always I agree. I always conflate those two because it feels like they were rising at, like, the same time. But,
definitely. Well, they were the last comic standing era. You know, like that type of time. Anyways, I like her, and she plays Spenser's, like, crazy ex-girlfriend, on and off again girlfriend in the movie, and she's, like, a really loudmouth, brazen, Bostonian cliche, for sure. Yeah. However, I thought it was working, and it was a little bit of a levity every time she showed up. But I liked when she confronts Spenser in a bathroom when she's on a date and then sees him. He goes to the washroom. She follows him in, and then they have sex. And I thought it was, like, pretty funny, and there was, like, levity to the moment, and there was personality, you know, and even, like, Mark Wahlberg's performance is good in it too. Sexual performance, that's not what I'm talking about, but it was like a nice moment that actually did add character and a dynamic to their relationship. So I like that too. But then he goes back outside to talk to Hawk, and Hawk is the biggest wet blanket of all time, and you know, I don't want to make this movie Winston Duke's fault, because it's not. It's everybody's fault, right? Other than Alan Arkin and Eliza. Like, they are actually trying stuff, right? But I think I'm with you. I was baffled by watching Winston Duke. I was baffled by it. He was giving nothing. I wrote that in my notes. Why is he not giving anything at all? I just did not understand.
It was strange for me because, like I said, at that point I had not watched the show or anything, but in doing the research, I knew that like this Hawk character was popular enough that in the original TV run, he got a spin-off show. Yeah. You know? So I'm like watching this thinking like, oh, this is like a two-hander. Like Hawk is as important as Spenser. And boy, you do not feel that in this movie. Like it's like they're just like you said, like their friendship never cements in the movie in a way that like feels real. And by the end of it, it just still feels like he's a roommate that was forced on him. And then he's like, oh, then Henry's like, well, he's going to train you how to box, and it's like he seems like not too happy about that. And it's just like I don't even really understand why Hawk like ultimately kind of joins his mission, you know? There's like that brief scene where Hawk gives like a little bit of his history. And I guess there's something to be said for the fact that he mentions that he was in jail for manslaughter, and Spenser asks him why, and he even says like, I'm not going to tell you, like you'll never know. And I'm sure that I guess maybe that's something that would have been explored in later ones.
Yeah.
But because you don't want to explore it now, because you are using it as like sequel bait, well, then it leaves it still a bit of a head scratcher. Like, why does he care and get like more invested in this mystery? You know.
Well, here I'll give a little bit more of a description of Hawk from the books, and I have a thing here. He's equally tough but somewhat shady echo of Spenser himself.
Yeah.
Hawk served in the French Foreign Legion and in combat operations overseas. Hawk is a gun for hire who lives by his own personal code. And Spenser and Hawk respect each other and are friends who each understand the other's philosophy of how to conduct themselves in life. Now, is like anything of that in this movie at all? It's in my opinion, it's not. It's wild. It's wild.
No, like I said, like even in that only that half of the pilot I've seen, like I already mentioned this, but in the beginning of that pilot, Spenser is investigating this case, and he's like basically the antagonist of this episode is this gangster, this Boston gangster, and he knows Hawk, but Hawk is like the hired muscle for that gangster. So like Hawk is like following him because the gangsters told him. And he mentions to someone, they're like, you know that guy? He's like, yeah, we were both fighters. And I think he says like, we even had a fight or something. He's like, I know him. And I have gotten to a scene where Hawk confronts Spenser and his girlfriend on the street, and they have like this kind of like, like a really intense meeting. And Hawk is saying to him, like, you just don't want to admit to yourself that we're both the same. Like, yes, I'm a hired gun, but that's kind of what you are too, right? You're a private eye. I just do it for a different, I'm just on a different side of the law. But I can already tell, like, obviously by the end of the pilot, Hawk will realize he's in the wrong. And because of his like moral code, he'll jump from working from the gangster to being with Spenser, which I haven't even finished it, and that's already more interesting, right? To have Hawk start as a mole or like a tough guy for the mob and jump over to help this PI, rather than just be like, oh, he's forced on him because he's his roommate that's given to him. Like totally. That's not fun. You don't want to see like the key relationship that's supposed to form like the two-hander that's going to do multiple movies start because Henry just goes, you have to room with this guy and you have to train him. Like, oh wow, yay, exciting,
Totally.
But just bizarre script decision.
What'd you think of the Mark Maron jump scare?
It was only a jump scare for me in that, as we said, if this movie is like, again, confused about whether to be a comedy or serious, and it has moments of comedy, why do you bring in Mark Maron and not have him play a funny character?
Totally.
Or like, why is it Mark Maron? I just don't understand. He's not. Mark Maron actually is a good actor, right? I've seen him give very good performances and things like To Leslie. We also know he's funny. He's just given nothing here. He's just like, he's exposition man in this for just a couple scenes. And it's like, wow, that's a waste of talent, Like he's more wasted. Like, why is it like Post Malone is better used in this movie than Mark Maron?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. Is Mark Maron even from Boston?
I think he might be. I don't know.
He might be. I know he's an East Coast guy, but I didn't know if he was from Boston. Okay, maybe he is. Okay, never mind. That's probably what it is then. It's just it's like the needle drops, right? Every needle drop is from a Bostonian band, including Boston themselves. So.
Oh no, he was actually from Jersey, but he did go to Boston University. So there you go.
Right.
He has a Boston connection. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't really have a lot to say. Like, even the mystery I thought was really boring. Bokeem Woodbine, I mean, he's one of those guys that's in everything. Like
honestly, would have been a better Hawk.
Oh, by far, totally.
He's just got more charisma, even in this. Like like I'm not saying the movie's not great, and the fact that he's like the key to the mystery. Spoiler alert. It's not like
Chekhov's toothpick. Actually,
was I excited that there was a big hit reunion? Yes, of course. You follow my letterbox. You also know my general movie watching habits. You know that in general, I'm often watching like a lot of Hong Kong action. And it's like recently I have been doing that. And you can bet that when you've been spending months watching, the Hong Kong cinema of Sammo Hung and, Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock, to have a movie end in a Mark Wahlberg Bokeem Woodbine fight, not quite scratching the same itch there a little bit, not really as exciting.
No.
But yeah, he was fine. What else? Even like the thing you said about the truck, right? Like the Chekhov's truck. It just proves how lazy this movie is, because you're right that it's like clear when he first sees the truck, like, there's something there, because he really is obsessed with it. But then it's not brought up again until the very end when he has it. Yeah. In fact, they kind of forget about the whole thing about him really wanting to be a truck driver, because I do want to point this out, because I want to see how much you thought it was stupid. In recent months, there's been these like stories about how it's been revealed that Netflix makes it has a mandate with their movies and their filmmakers to have characters constantly talking about what's going on, so that people can be zoning out and not paying attention to the movie, but basically still follow it, which is just great for art and cinema. This is why Chris and I are so excited about the future of this industry. But the version of that in this is I'm so stupid. Every time they cut to Spenser in the truck driving school where he's supposed to be learning how to be a truck driver, he's instead distracted, and he's writing about the case, but in the most hey, our audience is stupid way, where he literally writes notes like, "Who killed Boyland?" ?
Why?
Toothpick? Yeah, why? He literally writes why.
And underlines it. Yeah. And then he makes a triangle, and he puts the detective's name and then somebody else and then a question mark. And he's like, it's like parody. It's like parody.
Yeah. Kind of I didn't even know. Do you think, was it an intentional joke at the beginning when they show a bunch of establishing shots of the prison, and then when they cut to him in the prison, they put the word prison up on the screen really big? I hope that was intentional.
It was, because at the end.
The lobster one.
The lobster one did make me laugh. I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. So it was a long con,
Yeah. Did you notice the product placement for his protein powder?
I did not, but that makes sense, obviously.
There's this great this whole thing. It's funny too, because it's so bizarre how it happens, because they really play Spenser as this salt of the earth guy, right? Where when he looks in the fridge, where in the house and the room he's forced to share with Hawk. Hawk is training to be an MMA fighter, so Hawk is eating very healthy, and Hawk has oat milk in there, and Spenser is just so confused by oat milk. He's like, "What is this oat milk?" And him and Alan Arkin have a whole discussion about it. And then later, we cut to a scene where Hawk is giving his dog a massage, and right next to him is all the Mark Wahlberg brand protein powder, and she's like, "Okay, so salty earth guy, hates the idea of oat milk, but don't forget to buy my protein powder at the same time."
Totally.
Yeah.
What was he doing too on his computer? He didn't know how to use his computer. He had been locked up for 3 decades.
Yeah, that was funny too, because they make a point of saying how he spent the entire 5 years in prison just reading all the time, right, and learning everything he could. He comes out of prison like a very learned man, and then later they do again because they think it's funny, the cliche of he has to get a surveillance footage off a computer, and he's like, "Well, give me the tape," and it's not on tape, it's on the cloud. He's like, "What's a cloud?" And it's this dude would know what the cloud is. Why are you playing him dumb when you made a point of how smart he is? I don't know, man. It's just they know the easy joke, but they don't care if the joke is justified by what they've already told us about the character.
Totally. Yeah. And it's not like this movie's taking place in a technological crossover event. No. This is the cloud and and hard drives have been around for 15 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just don't, or longer. But yeah, this. I'm amazed. Oh, sometimes we say this, but I am amazed that we've even talked this long about this movie, because it is probably the least amount of notes I've written down. Let's just double check if I've said everything. I did, actually. Yes, I said everything I wanted to say. There's really... Oh!
My only other note is almost 2 hours, which I was very upset about, because it's at least with Mile 22, they were nice enough to get us out of there in 85.
I will say this. The sequel tease is really funny because it's about maybe dirty firefighters now. So it's man, Boston, looking corrupt as shit. So I don't really understand... they're obviously trying to make almost a love letter to Boston, but then showing all of their authority figures being
I
corrupt.
guess I'll give them another slight compliment there in that, Wahlberg and Berg, because some of the movies they've made are often accused of being that was kind of like jingoistic, rah-rah patriotism guys. And you would think that maybe Wahlberg wouldn't want to make a movie about showing how corrupt the Boston PD are, but no, he did,
that's true.
And there definitely was some stuff around this time where like, I don't know if you remember this, like in the news, but there was like a neo-Nazi rally in Boston, and a bunch of like counter protesters showed up to like say like, hey, don't be neo-Nazis, and the Boston PD came in and beat up the counter protesters like way more, and so they kind of obviously, and then like the police like commissioner had some like really shitty things to say about the counter protesters, so it was like kind of like they didn't come out looking great. So I guess I'll give it to him for not just being like, yeah, no, all the cops in Boston are great, and acknowledging that no, cops are often assholes, and crooked.
Want to talk about that app?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh wait, does this deserve a sequel?
Oh, no, I said that. Especially, I'm not watching Hawk and Spenser ever again. Like those two guys are just devoid of any friendship. Like I don't get it. I didn't see an arc. I didn't see it at all. Like I didn't see them start as enemies and become friends. It just kind of like weirdly happened, and I don't think Hawk smiles once in the movie. It's just kind of, it's like the most blasé partnership I've ever seen. It's just stupid, and I don't want to see them again. It's bizarre.
Liz asked me if I would watch the sequel, and I said I probably would, only because I'd probably fall for Netflix's trick where it would just come on autoplay on something, and I would just be doing something else, and it would just play, which is like what they want from me. But yeah, totally. But I'm with you in that. Yeah, this is like. I'm so glad I watched this yesterday, because we're 24 hours out. This is very quickly dissipating from my brain.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that's Spenser Confidential. Let's talk a little bit more about Mark Wahlberg becoming super faith guy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in 2018, there is an app that hits the App Store called Hallow. It's an American Catholic meditation and prayer app. I actually looked into the app. I watched a YouTube dissection of it that came out actually fairly recently within our theme month, and was talking about Mark Wahlberg's involvement with the app. So I thought that was great. More Matrix stuff for me. But this app is quite popular. As of February 2022, it's been downloaded more than 2 million times. It has two types of subscription services, yearly or monthly, and it basically gives you access to Bible stories and prayers, meditation, Christian music. During my deep dive on the app, total scam. That's what I'll say. It is big time taking advantage of people. I'll say that right now. It is taking advantage of people, but it does feel that way. The pricing is outrageous. These guys that I can't remember the YouTube video that I saw, sorry, or else I'd give them credit, but they went into it basically saying how it's obviously like copy pasted bullshit. And even the voiceovers are all kind of like, they're not hired actors. They are just, AI reproductions, this kind of thing. But you know what? It maybe gives people comfort. I'm not sure. Anyways, in April of 2022, Mark Wahlberg announced a partnership with Hallow. And this was congruent to his film in 2022, Father Stu.
Yep.
Now that's a movie about a priest, a boxer turned priest. So
yeah, that was kind of when he like really put it like that. It was like stamped on like the public consciousness, right? And he really put himself out there as like, I'm like Christian man now. You know, like I'm making these like high profile like Christian movies. Yeah.
He has a couple quotes here that I want to say that it relate to, I guess, his past, because actually they did an interview with him on March 5th of this year. So just last month, they did an interview with him because I guess the Hallow had a Super Bowl commercial as well this year.
God, we take this moment just to give you thanks. We thank you for this time to come together as a family, as friends, and as a country.
Help us, Lord, especially this Lent, to grow closer to you. Amen.
Join us in prayer this Lent on Hallow. Stay prayed up.
And then, of course, beginning of March was, the beginning of Lent. So there's a Lent challenge with Hallow. And these are some quotes. It's called, what is it called? It's called Lent Pray 40 Challenge. Mm-hmm. And if you go to Mark Wahlberg's Instagram during all of this stuff, I said it earlier in the beginning of the episode, I said, stay prayed up. That is his call to action.
Yeah.
So it's just quite funny. Stay prayed up.
It's that time of year again. Hey, buddy. You leading Lent on Hallow this year?
You bet, brother. Stay prayed up.
Yeah, you know it. Hey, Father. You joining Lent again this year?
Of course. Stay prayed up.
All right, Father. Sister, you joining us again on the app this year, right?
I am, Mark. I can't wait to join you guys on Pray 40.
Love it. Hey, Chris.
Yo, what's up, Mark?
You want to join us on Hallow this year?
Join you on Hallow? I was hoping you'd ask. Yes.
Stay prayed up.
I'll stay prayed up. You said it. I love it. Can I say that?
Check it out. Download Hallow today.
I've been saying it all week, by the way, to my fiance. I've been just walking around. Stay prayed up.
Can I read you a quote from Wahlberg?
Please do.
In an article about Hello and the Lent Challenge. He says, I've made, 50, 60 movies. People always come up to me and say something, but most of the time now, people usually talk about Hallow and how much it's changed their lives. Bullshit. There's no way most people will meet Mark Wahlberg and like, dude, let's talk about your app Hallow. No, that's not happening. No. If anything, most people are coming up and saying, say hello to your mother for me. Just admit it, Mark. Just
Totally. But it goes back to what we were saying about his errors of his childhood. Okay, we talked about that last episode in Mile 22. If you want to go into a deep dive, go back and listen to that episode. But he says here that he's talking to the reporter. He said, I had a very, very troubled childhood. Until now, just being impatient with people, being short with people, not being as understanding, as thoughtful. Hey, Mark, that's an understatement. Okay. You get caught up in all these things every day in your life. There's only one person who was perfect that walked this earth, and that was Jesus. And everybody else should be a little bit more mindful. He says he's encouraging young people to help them avoid making the same mistakes that I made and that other people make. With God in your life every day, it allows you to be in the position where you can make the right choices. Do you think he means this, or do you think he got paid so much money to be part of this app?
It's probably, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other, right?
Oh, totally.
You want to believe he means it, and to be fair, it's not the worst messaging. I will say you don't need God in your life to make the right choices either. That's important to remember. Yeah. But it is true that faith can be a good thing for people. And as you said, I'm definitely not anti-faith as much as I'm more skeptical of like religion and organized religion. And that's where it gets tricky because it's definitely a good thing for him to act like a youth mentor. And when you hear him say like, look, I did a bunch of terrible things as a kid, and I want to make sure kids don't do that now. My only concern is that we have often seen how religion itself can be kind of twisted, and especially certain types of religious followings today. Getting involved with some rather questionable political matters and things, and then especially when, like as you said, with this app even being questioned a little bit about whether it's genuine. I don't know, but you want to believe his messaging is coming from a good place at least, but it also seems like there's definitely a financial aspect. So, as is often the case with religion. So,
what made me just feel worse about this app, and the reason why I said what I said right away when talking about it, is that the Vatican and Catholicism has an app like this already, and it's free. And I think at least the actual organized religion has a free app for people. But here, which is an app that raised $12 million from Series A of rounds, and then $40 million from more venture capitalists, including another guy that you love, Peter Thiel.
And another actor I love, Chris Pratt, getting involved too.
Yeah, see, I hate living like a such a cynical life. You know what I mean? Like, and I do truly, listeners, I do truly want to think the best. I really do.
Yeah.
But I do the research. We do the research on these things, and I see this, and the amount that they charge, and what they do.
Well, and even just like, and I understand it was just like they made like a cheesy B movie together, but like him getting in camp with like Mel Gibson now, and Mel Gibson being like the ultimate example of someone who uses religion as kind of a deflection from what a horrible person he is, you know, and like, so yeah, I don't know, and that's where as you just said, that's where my cynicism does kick in, because you're like, boy, it's not the worst thing in the world to say, hey, I want to teach kids to, you know, lead, you know, productive lives and not get involved in like crime and like, you know, drugs and all that stuff. But then to say like they have to pay for the app to learn those lessons. Okay. Like,
yeah. And that's why it goes back to what I said about this era of Mark Wahlberg. This era is just, it's too much for me. I don't know where he's going with this. I don't know what he's doing. What's his end game here other than just making all the money? So I don't know. When's enough, you know?
So let me offer you the slightest glimmer of hope, right? Just a little bit.
Okay.
Because I was looking at Mark Wahlberg. So where do we go from here, right? We're wrapping up our Mark Wahlberg series. We just did a fairly recent movie. We've talked about how the movies since have kind of fallen into either the streaming world or like, you know, like the flight risks, the little B movies with Mel Gibson. Where do we go from here? He has 3 movies in post-production and 1 movie filming right now. And one of the ones in post-production is The Family Plan 2. Like I said, the sequel to a streaming movie that I have no idea what it even is. The other one is Balls Up, which is supposed to be like a goofy comedy directed by Peter Farrelly and written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who are like the Deadpool and Zombieland guys. So that could maybe be something, right? We've talked about how Wahlberg is really quite good in comedies. So maybe. But the one that actually does, I have some interest in, and I don't know if you know this, is he's jumping into another kind of IP play in the same realm. Another like famous mystery writer, Donald E. Westlake, who has a character much like Spenser, you know, a multi-book character called Parker, who has already had multiple adaptations. You know, Lee Marvin starred in Point Blank. You know, Mel Gibson did one called Payback. Jason Statham did one, Parker, which we will eventually do on this show.
Right.
And who knows, maybe someday we will do this upcoming one, but Mark Wahlberg is going to be making a Parker movie. And the reason I have some hope for this is it is going to be written and directed by Shane Black.
Oh. So
Shane Black and Mark Wahlberg coming together to make a Parker movie. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. Like that has my attention for sure.
Oh,
right?
sweet.
So that, to me, that's probably the best bet of like a potential, like, oh my God, I actually care about a Mark Wahlberg thing again, and maybe like a little bit of a comeback. It looks like it's being made by Amazon, so I don't know if it's going to go to theaters at all. You know, with some of their stuff they do, but here's hoping that one at least turns out good. You know.
Yeah. Hey, Dermot Mulroney's in it. Rosa Salazar, love her.
Yeah, I could see that being like the good version of what this should have been.
Yeah.
Right. You know. Yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about the $6 billion man that he's in pre-production for, playing Steve.
That's never going to happen. They've been talking about that forever. That's never going to.
Yeah, that's one of those IMDb credits that are there forever. But that's very cool. Play Dirty. That's the movie. It's completed. Very cool. You know, I had no idea what Shane Black was up to. And Thomas Jane's in it. There you go. Look at that. Tony Shalhoub, Keegan-Michael Key, Lakeith Stanfield. Wow. What a great cast.
Yeah.
And it'll be forgotten as soon as it goes on.
I know. and we will be covering Play Dirty on Failure to Franchise in 2027. Stay tuned.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay, well that's cool. That's definitely on my radar now. So great. How'd you feel about this? Like the theme month, Mark Wahlberg, everything.
The theme was fun. It's like you said, but I am at a point now where I'm like, I don't really want to watch any more Mark Wahlberg for quite a while. Definitely got burnt out. It's kind of a bummer that it ends here, because it is like, you want these kind of themes to end on like a triumphant note, and instead I feel like we did watch an actor kind of fall into the worst pitfalls of what the industry is doing. But then again, maybe that's appropriate for this show, right? Because this is a show that kind of deals with the failures of Hollywood and how Hollywood just keeps getting things wrong. And like where Wahlberg is now, just Mr. Streaming Movie Man, that's a very good encapsulation of the problems with the industry. And this movie was very representative of it. So, but overall, how do I feel about it? I don't know. It gave me an excuse to watch Italian Job again. So that was nice.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, it was cool going through his career like that. Like I know we've done a spotlight on a few actors in our tenure here, but you were so right that you pointed out when we initially slated everything that there is like distinct Wahlberg eras.
Yeah.
And I think that was very interesting to see. He's a different guy really at every stage of these movies. So I found that very interesting. Again, I still like the guy. I do need a break. So I need a break from his movies. But no, I enjoyed this. This was nice to dedicate this long to in depth.
We were just saying how we hope Play Dirty is good, and I think that speaks to the fact that it's kind of like what we said about Vin Diesel when we did some movies with him, right? Mm-hmm. There's something about him where we're hoping to get back to the version of him that we like. You know, nothing would make me happier than to see another Mark Wahlberg movie where we're like, yes, that's the Wahlberg charm, and that's the Wahlberg magic that he can and has shown before. And he's like in a little bit of the pits right now, but it'd be nice to see him come out of that with like something really utilizes his talents better than whatever this junk is.
Oh yeah, and a Shane Black action comedy, assuming seems to be
that's the thing. It'll be very, very interesting to see how Mark Wahlberg acclimates himself to that very, very particular Shane Black voice, right? Mm-hmm. And I in my head that's kind of a question mark, and it's all going to be dependent on that. You know, can he acclimate himself to that like very fast rat-a-tat in the way that Robert Downey Jr., Val Kilmer, Russell Crowe, and Ryan Gosling were able to.
I'm interested in that one, and then that comedy. As I said previously, Dopey Mark Wahlberg is my favorite. So
Dopey Mark Wahlberg is the best, yes, for sure.
The best out of any Mark Wahlberg, I want a Dopey Mark Wahlberg, for sure. Mm-hmm. And we don't like making fun of actors. So I hope we did not make fun of you, Mr. Wahlberg, one time in these 4 episodes.
Well, we don't. Again, there's always distinctions. We don't make fun of actors, but we do make fun of shill, pitch people. So
okay, all right, acceptable.
You brought it on yourself, Mark.
Yeah. Okay, that'll do it for Mark WahlTURD and the Yucky Bunch. I was so happy that the pun worked. But as all things die, other things are reborn. Speaking of resurrection and God and Jesus and all that, you like that sloppy segue?
That? You just got Mark Wahlberg's attention. He's listening.
Pretty good, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Stay prayed up. Okay. We haven't really done.
Oh wait, I got one, Chris. You're talking about stay prayed up. What about stay played up?
What do you mean?
Because we're about to do something that you play,
Oh, you know what? Nice. Nice. Okay. I'll keep that in. So yes, we're going to stay played up. Trev, do you have much... You know what? This was actually a question that I'll probably ask you in the episodes, so I'm going to leave it there. But what I'll say is there is a certain genre of video games, and they're fighting video games. We noticed in our long, never-ending list of failure to franchise prospects, there is 4 that can fit in this category of fighting video games. So we're calling them fighting video lames. Mm-hmm. Not my best.
Hold for applause.
Yeah. Please clap. Okay, so May 6th, we're looking at Street Fighter from 1994. Mm-hmm. May 20th, we're looking at Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li from 2009. I'm pretty sure is an all-timer bomb. So we are gonna that'll be fun to talk about. Justin Chatwin, if anybody remembers that guy. June 3rd, DOA, Dead or Alive, from 2006. That's the movie that was based on the titty fucking
all
volleyball
female
game,
fighting
right?
game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of physics were involved in that game. Mm. June 17th, we're capping it off with Tekken from 2010.
Mm-hmm. A movie I did not even know existed until I was making this list.
I was just about to say the exact same thing. I had no idea this movie came out. So, I like that we're starting in the 90s, and then we have 3 movies to talk about in the 2000s. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and it's cool now because, like, I think it's safe to say for the longest time that the joke was Hollywood just cannot figure out video game movies. They're a curse. That's definitely not true anymore with the success of Super Mario Brothers, Minecraft. I assume that the Legend of Zelda movie that's going to be coming along will be a huge hit. Hollywood seems to have cracked the code finally, but we will be looking back at a time where it was very much true that video game movies were a huge risk, and usually that risk did not pay off. So fun to go back to that. Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting talking about games that have barely any narrative.
Yeah, what do you do with that, right?
Yeah,
like we're going to be looking, like just to look ahead without even saying anything about them, we're looking at 2 movies based on Street Fighter, well, specifically Street Fighter 2, based on the same game, but completely different like tones and movies because there's no narrative to work with, basically. So you can do whatever you want. So.
Totally. By the way, I got something wrong. I said Justin Chatwin was in The Legend of Chun-Li. He's in Dragon Ball Evolution.
He is, yeah, which we will do someday also. But,
okay,
but you know, it's funny when you said that.
I'm conflating those 2 movies.
When you said that, I just went along with it because he seems like somebody that would be in that movie. So,
all right, okay. Follow along at F2FPod. That's at F2 the number 2 FPod on all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. A star rating would be awesome. And just join the tribe and hit that subscribe. And grab your controller. And let's, fight, No, that wasn't good? No, you didn't like that? Okay, it was bad. We gotta go.
Chris, this is crazy. Do me a favor right now before we get off this call.
Sure.
Go to Letterboxd.
Okay.
And read the first line of my In the Lost Lands review.
Okay, 1 second. Okay. All right, 2 stars. Yes, it's bad, but bear in mind, Dave Bautista replaced Justin Chatwin. Oh my god, a god level upgrade. Holy shit. Dude. Oh my god. My work is done.
Yep.
That is fucking wild. I swear I didn't read this review before.
Oh, I know. You said you didn't. Yeah, so.
Holy shit. Unbelievable. When I was talking, were you just like rock hard? Like, oh, fuck, that's funny. Crazy. Wow. The Matrix.